wheat pillow is with me. YouTube is lagging behind. Yeah, YouTube usually is a little bit dragging after. I don't know if it's a sync link or whatever the issue may be. But you will be able to see the same things, I'm hoping. And I was supposed to have Toby with me, but I do not think he woke up to an alarm because he is... It's way early in the morning for him. I was hoping to have him with me, but apparently not, which is a little bit unfortunate. But you get me all to yourselves done. So, topic for today is gonna be, as hinted in the description, explosives. Go through a little bit about how they work, where you get them, the tech tree, and kind of thoughts and testing out and some of the functionality for it. So I am on one of the current open PR side branches with some explosive fixes and some changes to behavior. So we'll see if we explode our way out of the server or if everything plays nice now. So this is not the same behavior as you currently have on staging and on the playtest. It's stuff that will go into playtest here as soon as they pass code review. So we'll kind of run through it a little bit. When will we get nuclear reactors? Probably not prior to 1.0 if and when. We'll see. It is something that is an interesting topic in terms of management, sustainability, and kind of impact and implication, but it's hard to do something that has generally been very privatized in eco into something that is server-wide destructible in a sense. So it's a subject for discussion and probably not something that we're looking at least until we exit early access. Does this mark the first time that stream exploding is welcome? Yeah. Absolutely. But yeah, so missing Toby a little bit. We'll sneak through him. Where do we start? Do we start with just planting one, or do we start with the tech tree? And yeah, the cats will probably cause a ruckus in the background. Try to ignore them as much as possible. I will be trying to ignore them for the stream being, but one is contently laying on the desk, basically sleeping, and the other one is just going nuts in the background, walking around. Oh, it's anytime we do a stream or anything like long-term sitting in front of the PC, like extended work sessions or whatever else, he gets a little bit bored and kind of like paces back and forth behind me, just looking for attention. And then as soon as I look at him, he just sits down, calmly lays ahead, and just like chills out. I look away, he continues howling. So yeah. Oh, he'll probably make an appearance someday here. Sometime. He was on the stream last time. But yeah, if we let's start with the tech tree. Pull that open. So, where and when, tech-wise, is it being introduced? What professions are involved, and what crazily new ingredients are we looking at? There we go. I have it in dark mode, so I don't light up myself on the camera as well. I usually turn into a white alien when I open this, but the application side of things had a dark mode, so we'll run with that, see how it works. I also have the second thing. Can remove those since those are not active. There we go. So we have basically tier. If we're looking at the general tier progression in the game as 1, 2, 3 or 0, 0, 1, 2. You have kind of your early stage, which is tier 1, and then you have your mid-game stage, which is where you start to embark on mechanics and sort of industrial revolution. And then you have late game, which is the modern stuff with electronics and so on. We opted to do to try it out a little bit. So we have this part here, which is, maybe just pull that out and do something fancy with it just to kind of separate it a little bit. Oh boy, that was a little bit too much. No, too much. Go away. I wanted a slightly faded gray. Something. Let's do with that. So this is basically your first tech unlock for explosives. And it's made in the machinist table right now. It's still under some adjustments debates. We were talking about if we wanted to do something earlier than that, to have like a stick of dynamite available way earlier. We've also talked about paper milling on a general thing and introducing something earlier for paper. But maybe wrapping it in cloth or something. But the initial thing is you get access to sulfur, which is a new ground terrain material. You crush it up, and for a late game thing, you have it as a byproduct from oil refinery production. So it will come off crude oil. You crush it up, mix it up together with compost and charcoal. Turns into black powder together with paper. Turn it into dynamite. That gives you bundled dynamite, and that has a certain blast radius. For the late versions of it, you have the black powder together with everything to make the dynamite. You also have added needs for nitric acid and plastic, as well as some copper and ethanol in there. So you are going to go kind of full tech tree width to get access to the mining charges, which are available to do remote detonations from, as well as having a bigger blasting radius. So there's a couple of new things in here, with the yellow being completely new ingredients or items. Blue ones being stuff that you've seen before. Green's the processing tables. And it's kind of your general tech progression of it. So it's fairly integrated with a lot of already existing things. It puts heavy emphasis on some of the professions that you may not have a lot of things to do with at the moment, such as fertilizer. My inner mining child is cheering. And then we have remote detonator, which is your new tool that is kind of an ease of access for the mining charges. Where you have make it out of fuses, advanced circuits, light bulbs, and plastic and fiberglass. Crushed sulfur as a byproduct. I take it Miller needs to crush charcoal. It's using it's using charcoal powder. So it's taking either the charcoal that you have, or which I actually forgot to list here as a little thing. You do have another way to gain charcoal now, which we'll get into here as well. Previously, the only way to get charcoal would be to turn regular wood into a kiln and then process it into charcoal. You now have a new method of doing it. I do not remember if I set up let's do that. So we have, yeah, it's not in on this or actually it's the charcoal. Don't worry about me. I'm just a little bit lost. And I need to do that since we're streaming. Pull up the interface scale. So it gets very hard to actually see what texts in on the stream. But yeah, so now you have peat charcoal, which is our second new ground material that we showed off earlier. Can't remember if it was on stream or if it's just stuff I've been posting on Discord. But you do it through the same process. You take peat, churn it through a kiln, that'll turn out charcoal. So it is another way of gaining charcoal rather than just from wood. I'll flip it over to time. And peat is available as a replacement, as we have shown in wetlands. So previously inside the wetlands, if we do a little side section cut here, we do a little bit like this, and we just do a level. There we go. So previously you had this layer of dirt or clay in mixed that had a pretty decent layer of coal, like regular bituminous stone coal. That coal is gone. It is coal no more. You now have a peat layer in between the dirt and the clay, which means you'll have less general available coal before you really start to mine down. However, unlike regular coal, it can be accessed and burnt directly as the resource when you shovel it. Pull that up, do that. I'm gonna do /give iron shovel. So the peat itself is a burnable fuel by itself. It's kind of if people were playing with the old coal that you just mine, shove in a furnace or whatever. Peat was always kind of intended to be the replacement of it when we introduced the crushed materials, but interdependencies with other things we wanted to do with it, it kind of got put at the side for a later date. Now we've reached the later date. We finally have it available as a material. So that's a replacement material for it. Will digging up peat to destroy wetlands, or can you just leave the top layer of dirt without causing any damage? At the moment, you can just dig it up. We are experimenting a little bit with the explosives in terms of general environment shifts in terrain and ground layers. With kind of the intention of soft layers will kind of erode. So if you're digging out a giant hole in the ground, it'll collapse / degrade eventually, is the kind of goal objective for it. So if you want to dig out something below the ground, you'd need to add some sort of sane structural thing to it. Not directly shifted in towards like pure structural integrity per se, but with the explosives now being introduced, it opens up kind of small venues that we can look at to do this. And some of it is already happening with explosives that will show off. But yeah, so coal is a little bit diminished in terms of availability in wetlands. You're not going to have as easy access to it as you did before. Peat's replacing that, and it's also offering kind of a way to scavenge wetlands for stuff to use as charcoal. So, let's give us a few more dynamite. Let's do 20, and then let's do mining charge 20, and then we do give remote detonator. So these are things obviously that are work in progress. Things can happen unintentionally, and things may change. Up and down. Yeah, the balance value for peat in general is something that I'm still kind of looking at in terms of how much do I want it to be worth from the peat side of things to turning it into charcoal and then dealing with that. But I do still want peat to offer a large enough incentive to just be kind of used side by side with coal. Which offers up coal to be used more for general steel production and or paint, etc. So anything related to balance in that regard is still going to be probably adjusted slightly, and kind of tweaked around with that. So for explosives, let us do. Let's just do a flat granite layer. We can have a nice little backdrop here. So we have the early tier, which is the dynamite. And then we have the late tier, which we have the mining charge. And then we have a nice little remote detonator for it. And this is also something that we've been discussing internally surrounding whether or not we want explosives to trigger other explosives. So you can kind of chain react them up and down. And it's stuff being kind of tinkered with live during the playtest. So, behaviors might change. But yeah, so early one is a straight up physical connecting thing. You need to walk up to it, you need to place it down, and then you need to light it. And once it's lit, there's no turning back. It's gonna go boom. And then we have the remote detonator, which you can also light up on the fly, but you can link it to a detonator. And we're probably, yeah, we're still running into some bugs with it. The general idea is to link it when you place it, and then you can unlink it, and then once you have dynamite placed and linked, you just fire it off and it'll start going off one by one in sequence from the order of first placed / linked. Just to kind of do controlled chained reactions. So it's gonna be fun seeing players play around with it and cause absolute havoc. But there is a few things in it that we decided to do partially because general world stuff. But secondly, I wanted it to be a meaningful interaction when it comes to mining. Because I didn't just want it to be another way to kind of generate a whole massive ton of rubble, for example. I wanted mining to have a significant impact in the choices and decisions the player do to how they're interacting with acquiring more materials. So the dynamite and the explosives are turning rock and ore into their crushed variants. So you're not getting, if you want to have, for example, rubble or collect granite because you want it for statues where you need the solid granite, you're still going to need to manually mine it. However, if you're using explosives, it'll not only fall down to fall towards empty ground, layering it to it, but it's also going to be turned into crushed variants, which is skipping that mining crafting process step. So even if you don't have mining, anyone could buy dynamite and they can mine crushed materials by themselves, but you still need mining to craft the dynamite initially. But it kind of alleviates a bit of workload for the mining grind, coupled with the scoop for the steam tractor, and so on. At the moment, no. So what materials they turn into is fairly preset at the moment. but it is probably something that I might look at, because it would be, it's slightly gamifying it further, but it's not a bad idea per se, because then you know, back to that whole balance thing, if you want crushed gravel, don't blow it up further kind of thing. But yeah, you know, let's get explosive. So if you place it out, if it wants to be placed out, there we go. Server's being a little bit reactive to it. And then we light it up, and it has a timer on it, which is like 3 seconds. And then it shifts off the terrain. And it turns it into gravel. So there are some configurations for this in terms of balance-wise, where you can have it set to cause sort of a void gap. It deletes objects and blocks in between, so you have a percentage of material waste by this transformation, whereas if you're handpicking with mining, you have an absolute pure 1-to-1 ratio of acquisition. The configurations for the explosives do allow for a randomized chance of actually, you know, removing items. It's been something that we talked internally about, whether or not we wanted it to be happening, whether, you know, if we wanted it to happen to blocks that are transforming into other blocks. Because one of the obvious things here would be, you know, can you just use dynamite to continuously delete tailings, for example? If you have like a field of tailings, can you just shove dynamite on it and then use that percentage or kind of thing to delete it continuously? At the moment you can't, because I do not believe it should be eating things that it cannot convert. On the other hand, it is costing resources to craft the dynamite, so maybe we wanted to allow it to happen as an off thing. Doesn't want to be linked. We'll just have to manually explode it, the ranged ones. Yeah, so claim protection still works. There's no changing that. Same thing with civics, etc. The only thing that is kind of iffy is land shifts aren't really legally prohibited. So, you know, basically don't build gardens next to giant tall mountains if you don't have part of the mountain claimed. Will miners get calorie bonuses to using shovels? I believe it is under self-improvement right now, I think. But yeah, so ranges and radiuses are still being tinkered with in terms of balance. But it is same thing with like cost values in terms of, you know, how much these explosives are going to cost. But it is an interesting way to get stuff shifted around. And the same thing for effects and general VFX sounds and things like that is also being kind of tinkered with. And yes, he's making a lot of ruckus in the hallway right now. We can do a little bit of side mountain thing here. Put you in there. There we go. So the general notion here is, if you're having you know, it has practical uses, and it has like the field use for it is more of a, if you have a quarry, if we do this and we level this out just to give a little bit of a feel for let's do that here as well. So once you have sort of a set quarry, you can determine off, say, the distance for these things. We can do that here. So if we start here, it might actually cause a blockage with the placement there. It creates a sphere, and it kind of shuffles most of the stuff that's in that block radius, and it's a little bit, it'll probably be tinkered down like 1 block each side, so it's gonna be like a 3x3 plus 1 explosive. But down on ground level, you can then use your steam tractor scoop and then just collect the stuff that's on the ground. We just not enough inventory space. My character hasn't leveled up. It's not capable enough. So we grab this, and we do that. Drop that in there. So being able to just shuffle this up, and then suddenly you have all that material just ready to go. If you don't get stuck like me. Here we go. That's why we're kind of scaling the explosives a little bit for it. At the moment, it's only deleting blocks that it is actually transforming, so rock or things like that. And as an extra thing, let's just do, what do we do? Spawn. Let's just do this. So as people were saying that, hey, I can't demolish my house fast enough, we did a thing. Which I know someone did a video and posted it on. So you can, any constructed blocks can be demolished and just turned into garbage. If I can light it up. There we go. So, you know, if you have that big ugly building from someone that left the server, just turn it into trash. And once again, this is stuff that's it is only available for you if you have access to the property. As usual, it still follows the same law system as everything else. So instead of, you know, hammering it out, just bop in and drop down four or five explosives, and suddenly the house is demolished. And then you just scoop up the garbage. What happens if you're in the blast range? Nothing at the moment. We've been discussing kind of what we want to do with it, because it's hard to. We don't really have a lot of, like, you know, penalties in the same way as you would normally have that you can apply when it comes to explosives, etc. Like normally you would have, you know, fall damage, or you take actual direct damage to your character, but since we don't have hit points, it's not really applicable here. Apparently he's been quiet if he's getting attention, so now he's getting attention. No, but it is something that is kind of under revision, if you will. having you lose a bunch of calories and then maybe faint off, similar to how the drowning works, is probably the way we might look at it. Apparently he's like, oh yeah, this is the best place ever. Hej. Du är nöjd där? Yeah, that it's probably where we're leaning towards it. But it is slightly difficult controlling the stream and moving at the same time. I have a cat bunched up in me. It's like, yes, this is the best place. I am in center of attention. In face. And then he's just like curling up to a little ball here. Can we be nice? Can we? Please, cat. Please. Doo-doo. Yeah, so world objects in the current iteration isn't destructible. It'll just kind of ignore them, but we are probably going to be adding the same kind of destructiveness as like the meteor impact, for example. They just nuke stuff. Same thing for like if you blow up a stockpile or if you blow up a chest, work table, etc. The things are going to be lost. So I'm also presuming that people making explosives might be a little bit careful with not, you know, planting it out and blowing up their own workshop, but who knows. Stuff like that we feel is very much in the responsibility of the player to not, you know, destroy his own things. And care should be taken with some of the more powerful tools. Always felt that the lack of general destructibility surrounding your own environment has been a little bit too just safeguarded by your own interactions. Okay, now he jumped down. Let's see how many seconds it takes until he starts walking out the hallway and going, wow. Would mines also be prone to filling up with water needing to be pumped? That would be related to more water physics stuff, which is we'd like to, but I don't think it'll happen prior to 1.0, at least. The main focus is gonna be so 11.1 now, and then we are focusing a lot on towards like pollution changes, ecology and animal behavior, and a lot of those items that's been heavily requested for a while, and it's also something that we've been wanting to do. Incinerating garbage is an option at the moment. There is a recipe in the blast furnace, but it's a few things that I got on my agenda to kind of shift around for recycling, to do more of an expanded option for it. So the core idea with constructible blocks is that they'll be blown up into an equivalent type of rubble. So it's not just going to be garbage. The garbage only is kind of a placeholder thing. But the idea is that if it's stone based, it'll turn into something akin to mixed rock. If it's wood, it'll turn into like a wood rubble pile, etc., etc. If it's metal, same thing there, like scrap metal pile. And then that's going to be revolving the recycling thing and being able to salvage some of the material from it. Whereas right now, you kind of get a bunch of garbage and then you get to dispose of them. But the one of the future updates, we do have kind of recycling systems and revolving functionality to kind of deal with the garbage that comes with some of the other things, as it's one of the parts that really feels like it's lacking in eco crafting as is. It might also be a strong tool for griefers, yes. And that was, it's been a concern from kind of the start of it. Where, how do we deal with, for example, explosives as a very, very destructible manner of obtaining resources without, you know, as our initial kind of drafts of what if we just, you know, spawn rubble as usual and then you have rubble all over the place. Well, with explosives as well as Unity physics, they'd probably be flying around like saucers across the world. So if you have like a cliffside, you have a nice little road, someone pops a dynamite on the side, suddenly you have rubble to clean out for the rest of 3 days in the forest. Versus where you have something more solid like crushed materials, even if you have a physical deformation, such as with it falling from its general tops, it's still contained within the very local area. Do you think we'll get more quality of life things like the ability to copy paste shop limits, price, durability to other tools to make shops easier to set up? It's possible. We'll have to give it a little bit of a swirl, but it wouldn't be impossible to get a few quality of life things like that on the list. If I believe someone has some post about some of the quality of life things they had in mind for the store interactions. But if you haven't checked it out, freaking cat hair stuck in the stub. If you haven't checked it out, hop in on the EcoCanny site. So link at the top, eco.canny.io. Take you to our suggestions and improvements feature listing. Post which allows you to, you know, post comprehensive kind of ideas, suggestions, and everything in between. Where there's a whole bunch of things on there. Some of it is already tagged for planned, some of it is being in progress, and some of it we just, you know, want to have on there tracked for things we want to do in the future. So that's a source of ideas we pull from when we're working on specific subjects and kind of seeing what we can integrate and what we can do with it. So that's a great place to get your idea heard and also tracked, so it doesn't get kind of disappearing in the myriad of Discord chats, for example. But yeah, so on explosives and kind of interactions and everything in there, it is obviously destroying plant life. And I see the loading distance is a little bit off. And here you can see it kind of destroys and moves around some of the ground terrain. Is it not working properly? Do I need client changes for that? Could have sworn that was set up. Huh. It is supposed to knock around the trees, but I think Mike did something on the branch in the last bit that doesn't do it. Are you guys gonna do anything with PvP combat? No. Generally not at all. I understand where this is generally coming from, but general PvP combat doesn't really have a space in the game as is, because it removes the necessary elements for a lot of the political and relationship kind of quirks that comes on a server when you have to talk to people. Whereas with combat, you know, you can just go and shoot your neighbor. A good example is, yeah, Rust in a lot of those regards. And yeah, you do have that economy and cultural PvP environments. That is quite interesting on their own. As for animals in general, it'll probably kill the animals, but it'll outright just destroy the animals. I wonder if it's... Yeah, it is destroying slightly. Look at that, we found the toilet. It's still being kind of tinkered with and poked at. But it's been an absolute freaking blast, pun intended, to get this stuff sorted out and seeing it happening in Eco. It's I don't know, it's been wanting to kind of get around to doing it for a long time, and it's been fun getting involved in. It's been fun designing surrounding it and kind of embedding in all the different systems. Playtest is running at the moment on Coast Redwood, and we'll be shifting around values and some balance during the course of the playtest. We'll obviously continue doing that once it's actually in production as well. But yes, at the moment there's no dynamite fishing. Is it intended to destroy world objects as well? Yeah, I think that'll probably be what ends up happening. And yes, he is making a very, very attentive noise making in the background here. And now that he's not getting attention, he's grumpily just laying down in the box while making noises. Anything else that we had that I wanted to kind of push around? Can you blow up the guard? Yeah, it does have a percentage set rate. I don't know if don't know how much of it is pulled into yeah, so let's pull this up here for anyone that is more technically interested in it. So on the specific type of dynamite, or you know, in this case it's the dynamite object, we have the mining charge, but for modifications and configurability, you have the radius that you can set, you have the timer you set, and then you have a kind of initial crater that it kind of shifts stuff out from. And then you have the percentage chance of breaking a block when it's being shifted around. So initially at the moment it's 4%. But that's something for anyone that, you know, likes to adjust and change out recipes, or just mod some of the effects. Or if you want to go crazy and have like a Omega nuke and you do like 100 explosive radius and it kills half the server in one big bang, possible as well. So that is some of the config stuff that you can do for it. Will the Orca for the early trailers return by one day? I've talked a little bit with the art team about it, but it's probably far off in the future if that happens. But yes, hopefully it gives people a new dynamic way of doing some mining. And it'll probably give a bunch of feedback to new things that we can do. And as mentioned, you know, these are things that are work in progress, and they are intended to knock over trees and do some more direct effects in the fauna as well. But unfortunately that was not working, and I don't know why. I'm gonna see if I can't. Can I find the? Can I have a video of it. Pretty sure I have a video of it somewhere here. Can pull that up. I think is it this one? Maybe. Yeah. This thing here. It was a little bit too shock and awe. Pull that back. Shut up. There we go. But yeah, so do this. It shifts around the terrain as we've seen, and then cutting off the trees. So if you're rummaging around in it, and this is also things that we're sort of iterating around whether or not we wanted to just outright destroy the trunks, cause a bunch of debris, and see kind of like how much destructiveness we want in terms of, you know, we don't necessarily want the mining charges to be the end-all be-all new best tool to harvest everything, which is always the risk of happening when you're doing things like this, because we still want it to affect all the environment around it in some capacity. But that is a good jungle logging got an upgrade. That's a good question. Where will we find sulfur in the world? There's a few places at the moment. One of them, as we saw in the beginning, if I can find some grassland. Grassland got some new stuff. So sulfur comes in two shapes in the wild. You have some crushed sulfur, and you also have solid sulfur, which you require a pickaxe to chomp and harvest as any other ore. And you have some of it is spawning in the grassland. A little bit like a fool's gold kind of thing. You have crushed variants and you have some solid variants. Assortment. Let's do this, and the second place you can find it in is the warm forest, but it's a little bit deeper. If we grab this and we do our layers and we check out biome, and then we have our warm forest layer here that is covering the wetlands. So if we head over here and we just let's go crazily deep just so we can get a nice little cut. I've started to kind of reshuffle the biome materials in some of the forests because they're fairly boring at the moment with just a whole bunch of granite. You now have a pretty sizable layer of sulfur spotted around in the warm forest. Not to be mistaken with gold. This is the gold for explosives. And the third biome is the tundra, and it is only the tundra. So you have this basically the snowy outer layer in the middle here. So not the general mountainside nor the ice biome, but kind of squeezed up in the middle as a breakage. And it is both on higher. Let's go north. Let's be flying in the void. There we go. Then we just let it catch up a little bit. If it wakes up. Come on. You can do it. Well, there we go. Ta-da! There we go. And then we just do kind of do the same thing here. So we have a bit of spottiness to it, but it is quite substantial in terms of the quantity once you start getting deeper in. So it'll be under the first basalt layer, fairly deep down, or you know, subjectively. And well, the grassland one is it's not an abundance. It's kind of, you know, kind of get you going kind of thing, and the main sources for it is gonna be either mountainside-ish, which is then also competing with, you know, gold, copper, and just general spacage with other things. It's not competing with limestone. It is always going to be kind of embedding under or above it. So the limestone quantity isn't reduced. Now, something that is fairly new, and it's going to probably cause some headache for people doing oil drilling, is that with the sulfur, we are introducing a new byproduct for manufacturing things out of crude oil. And it is sort of a soft introduction to a general overhaul to oil drilling in general. Do you think mortared versions of the other stones will be in game eventually? We can sneak in a thing. So this is, yeah. Let's just sneak in some data here. Let's take this image. So I know some people are gonna be ecstatic over it. Some people are just gonna go, yeah. So our team is always generally an update ahead, if that makes sense. They do a whole bunch of assets for us on the need when we're doing general features, but on the average, when we're adding a new feature, we have sort of a comprehensive list of the general assets that are needed for these features, and kind of fully scoping it of how much art assets do we need, what are the art assets, objects, terrain, you know, tables, crafting systems, and UI overlays, etc. So all the explosive assets and everything surrounding it, outside of just the pure icons in game, has been done for quite a while. Art team tends to be ahead of everything, which is usually a nice thing, because once you have the thing, you can just shove it in and immediately you can test it out and see what's going on. And on that, I just got poked by Toby the other day with something that they're sneakingly working on for asset-wise for 11.2. And why I bring it up is because on the subject of mortared stuff, we're looking at supplementing the general world objects for housing furniture and more decor stuff with the other type of rock types. So we have them as ashlar, we have them as some of the other things. We're now also kind of pushing them down and having the full variety of things in mortared stone as well. So 11.2 probably contains a whole bunch of new cool decorative things. So that is also something to, you know, we've got more things coming, and it is a lot of fun new additions. As we're gonna, goal is to be generally comprehensive, feature complete for 1.0. That is the target, and that's kind of what the next series of minor updates is going to be pushing for. And explosives as a mean to kind of fill the gap in early over to mid game, and then mid game transition into a more industrial way of mining, as well as kind of interesting way to do tunneling and other interactions. And as I mentioned from the start, I also wanted it to be sort of a different approach to it. You need to think about the logistics a little bit differently. But if you get stuff kind of smoothly going, it can be a lot faster and a lot more efficient than if you were mining by hand and just using pickaxe until you get to skid steer, etc. So that's also a keynote of the changes to some of these systems. Is there any plans to add new block formats for the tier 1 to 4 construction blocks? Are you talking about general block forms as just different shapes for things? In that case, I think it's generally something that art kind of always keeps in the back of the head, but it is yeah, so we do want to change out the block selection UI itself, which is a separate topic. But block forms is something that kind of we do major overhauls for in kind of one go for each block set. As each new block has been added, we've kind of been expanding the options, doing a bit of polishing, which is why some of the older blocks are not looking as polished up and as high quality as some of the newer blocks, because they were made a longer time ago with less tools available, as we're streamlining more of the process as well. But if you have specific block forms that you'd like to see, hop in on the Canny and list up some of the forms you would like to see, if it's stuff that exists in another one already, and or you feel like there's block forms that are missing, same thing there. Talking about granite, is there any chances that the art department may eventually make it as beautiful as it truly is in real life? The gray is depressing. I know Toby has been wanting to kind of look at some of the textures overall, as they've been working on improving the quality of some of the other stuff. We've seen this with the massive overhaul to wetlands and desert, as well as the new textures for the sulfur. That have more detailing, more grittiness to them. And it is something that they're kind of constantly looking at. So right now, the as you can see, the granite is slightly low resolution compared to some of the newer textures, so things will overall just be touched up as we go. Are you gonna make it so that ashlar can be turned into aqueducts yet? That is a good question. I might actually look at that, because having ashlar aqueducts would be kind of nice. Need some ground radar for ore detection. Rock drills are so tedious. Yeah, there are some ideas, but I'm not gonna speculate too much of them because they might not happen at all, and I don't want to raise expectations in that regard. Might make the rock drills slightly more efficient though. Tune down the cost for them a little bit, make them available slightly earlier, and then kind of make them faster. Probably be helpful. Will we get a way to get rid of tailings in the future? Together with the recycling stuff that we have planned, you're gonna be able to significantly reduce the quantity. You're not gonna be able to kind of get rid of them completely. But things will definitely be shifted around in that. Same thing for the difference between wet tailings and dry tailings, which you don't really have a lot right now. It's just a matter of one being slightly more polluted than the other. Will normal lumber also get the many different block options as the Far East lumber? Probably not within the foreseeable future. I don't think we have the space to do anything about it until we have kind of the animal husbandry and everything surrounding that out of the way, because there's just so much work in that space that needs doing. So I can't make any promises. Making rooms count as rooms even if not squared rectangular shape would be nice. Yeah, the room calculator is working on kind of interconnected blocks. So it's more of an optimization and kind of spatial thing, that it has an ease of access of just checking through the blocks, like the adjacent blocks that aren't non-solids versus solids, and it's kind of making up the room. So if you have a diagonal where you no longer have a connecting block, it makes it a little bit finicky. You can adjust it to account for it, but it's a bit more performance heavy. So we'll see if we get another good pass on performance improvements and the chunk builder and surrounding systems. We might be able to do something about it, but it's one of those really deep core technical things that just likes to eat things in the background. Any plans to make it so windmills and motor wheels do not count as industry? We talked about it, and we're probably going to change it around so it reduces the points, so it has a penalty rather than completely removing it. But it might be something that we get to see in 10 point or 11.2. So we'll probably bring that discussion up in regards to some of the things that we're working on for 11.2, which is sort of like coziness, decorative things, and some other cool things that we'll talk about once we're through with 11.1 and got it out of the door. But yeah, no, holy moly. Feasting and tables and generating cultural bonuses one. We'll see. Will there be an option to zoom in or out in third person while driving a vehicle? Should be possible using the same zone. Let's do dump all. Steam truck. Should be possible as is. So when you're in third person view, it should allow you to do it, but maybe the max out zoom on the truck is a little bit inconsistently placed. Yeah, I think the camera's a little bit off. The camera might be a little bit too close. Is this what you're talking about? Because you do have like max zoom in. The zoom adjustment for the camera is you can hold Alt while scrolling, and that'll allow you to kind of zoom in and out. And yes, with the paintable changes, the paint or paint. The paint tool, yeah, thank you. So with the changes that we've done to the trucks and to all vehicles, as we've been sorting out the paintable things, our team has had the opportunity to kind of go over some of the older assets and polish them up a little bit. There we go. Can we do this now? Are you playing nice? Yeah, you're playing nice. Like a black handle. And then we do a red flatbed. And then we can do a gray cabin. Look at that, beautiful. Absolutely fantastic. Yeah, so you can finally have those vehicles that you all saw being, you know, different colors in the title screen in 9.0. As all, so for 11.1, the ground vehicles will be paintable. The art team is still working on the maritime vehicles, but all the ground vehicles are going to be paintable. I think maybe we can talk about... I do like the steam truck. I really do. But... we have this bad boy. That had a significant do-over. So now it fits much more in the aesthetics of it, as well as the general era it kind of transitions in between. But yeah, so we had a little bit of a polish on it. It's still having some quirks with the camera for it, because it's a little bit wobbly at the moment, but it should be performing a lot better in terms of turn capacity and playing a little bit nicer. But it's currently reacting on input for the camera, which it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be a little bit more staticky, so you don't have this head bobbing thing. So some changes. But yeah, so you know, major overhaul to the powered cart. Some touch up. So yeah. Advantage of making a powered cart as opposed to going for straight for the steam truck. It depends a little bit on technology stuff. One, they're a lot cheaper to make. Second, they're available before mechanics. You can get it. From pull up basic engineering and smelting. But yeah, I think that kind of wraps up what I wanted to go over with the explosive changes. And yes, the powered cart changes is coming in 11.1. So anything that is on here with the work in progress, be aware thing, as they might change out slightly during the development of it. But overall, it's what we target for 11.1. And hopefully we'll have a release date soon. But that also kind of boils down to how well the playtest works. If there's anything big that we need to adjust, change, or fix from feedback there. But yeah, no, I think that should be all good. And it's been a blast as always. If you have any more questions, you know, poke your head into the Discord and drop a note in the Dev Hangout. And I generally visit daily. And yeah, so anything animal stuff related interactions will be an animal husbandry thing. In what capacity scope happens, we'll see. And I'll kind of leave it to that. But yeah, no, have a absolutely splendid weekend, everyone, and I will catch you on next stream, which hopefully we'll have in 2 weeks. But as usual, I'll drop in a news post for announcements on streams and when they happen, so keep a lookout. And as said, have a great weekend, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.